Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, you won't believe what I've got for you tonight. Tonight, I have something extra, extra special for you. Our guest is Elizabeth Kay, living kidney donor, wife and Marine mom, AKF kidney advocate, BRCA2 Previvor, radio 99.1, The Mix, and TV, WISN 12 News personality. So she's going to look better than me. You know this already. Since 2009, because I'm strictly Ted Mack. Since 2009, Elizabeth Kay has been talking to thousands of listeners every day as a weekday morning co-host on WMYXFM 99.1 The Mix in Milwaukee, as well as doing frequent news segments for WISN 12 and regularly speaking to thousands of people at concerts and other events. Elizabeth has a very, very interesting kidney story. In December of 2019, her mother in law, Camille Ham, Hamme, was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney failure right before Christmas. She was born with poor functioning kidneys, and Camille has had kidney problems all of her life. And even a series of biopsies could not determine the cause of her excess protein in her blood and her urine until later in life when she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. That December, when she was told she was in stage 4 kidney failure, she did not even realize that her kidneys were that bad. And she and her entire family were shocked. Before this, when Camille was in her 30s and was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, she kept up with her medical appointments, followed her doctor's advice, and it was as a result of her annual appointment with physicians and follow-up testing that she learned her kidneys were shutting down. Her kidneys recommended a kidney transplant, or her doctors recommended a kidney transplant. The average wait time for a kidney transplant in the U.S. is between 3 and 5 years, and in some places like California, New York, or New Jersey, it can take a decade. She was listed at UW Health Transplant Center in Madison, Wisconsin. She was put on a kidney diet, exercised, and did all the things that her doctors requested of her. As a result, Camille was never on dialysis and obtained a preemptive kidney transplant. After Elizabeth learned that Camille's kidneys were failing, she decided she would test to see if she was a match. Elizabeth went through several tests to see if she could donate as a living kidney donor. She found out in the middle of December that she wasn't a match for Camille, but she was approved to donate and get Camille a match from someone else in the paired kidney exchange program. That next week was Christmas, and Elizabeth had Camille's name for the Secret Santa in their group, so she decided to surprise Camille with this exciting news. At her sister-in-law's house, when Camille opened her gift, she found a signal kidney bean symbolizing Elizabeth's intent to donate a kidney to a third person, which would move Camille to the very top of the wait list, and the next matching kidney would be hers. Elizabeth refers to Camille as, quote, her second mom, unquote, and, quote, the rock and heart of her family. So, on March 25th, 2021, Camille Ham received a new kidney from a donor from California. And only 5 days later, on March 30th, Elizabeth's kidney was removed and sent to a recipient in Kentucky. According to Camille, quote, it is a pretty humbling to be part of the process. She, referring to Elizabeth, has shown so much love and excitement during the process that has brought out the best in not only me, but my husband as well. It has turned a very scary process into something we've learned to embrace. It gets me emotional because it's something that I can never repay her for, unquote. Here's Elizabeth's response, quote, I am someone that was not able to have my own children, and for whatever reason, I've always wanted to give life in that way. And when this came up, I feel this was a way for me to give life, unquote. Since the time of the transplants, both Camille and Elizabeth are doing great. Elizabeth continues to give back to the community by advocating for her fellow kidney patients, recording videos. And I mean, this lady records videos on YouTube. Wow. And speaking to her audience about kidney donation, both on the radio and in person, and making herself and her story available to the press. Please give a warm, warm welcome to a true kidney heroine. Our good friend Elizabeth Kay is with us tonight. Elizabeth, how are you doing?
Jim, your introduction is so heartfelt. I'm doing fantastic. It is great to see you, my friend. We've known each other now for about 2 years, so I'm honored to be on the podcast and to be sharing our story. Thank you for that introduction.
I remember the very first time we met. I was at a table having breakfast and drinking coffee, trying to wake up for the American Kidney Fund. And I'm dragging and I'm telling myself, you can't do this, Jim. You got to get ready. You're going to meet with two senators and your representative today, all live and in person, no staff. So I got to get myself together. And this woman comes over and sits down next to me, sort of a bounce when she sits down, and she starts talking and fast and excited. And we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it's going to be great. And it's going to be. And then before I could finish my coffee, she got up and left. And I kept thinking, who the hell was that? So, but I discovered that it was our good friend Elizabeth Kay. Did
Oh,
I
Jim.
state did I state everything correctly in the introduction?
You know what you did? The only thing I forgot to tell you how to pronounce my mother-in-law's last name. It's Hammy.
Hammy.
Like you pulled your hammy, but you're right on it because a lot of people just say ham. So, but yes, it is Hammy. You got all those details correct, and there's a lot of details, as you know, when it comes to organ donation. There's a lot to work through and sort out. But when you tell the story, it kind of reminds me again of just what that time was like for our family, especially because that fell during COVID. It was 2019, December of 2019, when Camille found out she was in kidney failure. And we all know what happened in the spring of 2020. And when they knew she needed a kidney because of COVID, she could not get a kidney from a deceased donor. It would have to come from a living donor, which had all of us really nervous because we thought, how long is this going to take to find her a kidney? And we weren't really supposed to be around her. And even getting testing was a challenge because of COVID and all the restrictions. She had gotten COVID during that time and that year before she had received her kidney. It was, like a lot of you remember, it was a really scary time. And then to be dealing with a loved one that has a terminal diagnosis. And all you want to do is be around family, and we couldn't even be around her. So it just takes me
Yeah,
back to what that time was like and how scary that was.
that's rough. I do remember that.
Mhm.
I have to ask. You are a married lady, correct?
Yes, I am a married lady.
And you're married to a gentleman named Eric, who I heard his voice earlier. He's in the room someplace.
He was in the room. He was wrangling up the dogs and taking them upstairs. Yes, and then our son is technically my stepson, our son who's a Marine. Yeah, it's just me and the two boys.
That's Brayson.
Brayson, yes.
Okay. Please tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your education, and your employment experience.
Well, I am one of those people that was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm still here in the area. I had a great upbringing. I grew up in a house with my mom and dad and my three sisters. So, four girls in this house with one bathroom. And we didn't even have a shower in that bathroom until I was in high school because it was an older house just outside of downtown Milwaukee along the lakefront. And little by little, my parents were fixing it up. And why they decided to wait to fix up the bathroom towards the end, I don't know. But it was a great childhood. And we were really involved in all kinds of activities, sports, student council. We were involved with our church, and it was a great childhood. We had a great upbringing. And then I went to college also in Milwaukee at UWM, and I went to school for journalism, broadcasting, and public relations and advertising. And I knew I wanted to do something in the media. So I started working with the student ran television station, but I really wanted to do radio. I knew that's where I wanted to be because I love music, I love storytelling, I really enjoy entertainment, and that's where I thought would be a good fit for me. And I'm one of those people that went to school for this, and I'm still doing it today over 20 years later. And so I just had a quick 4 years up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, where I hosted a morning radio show up there. And then life was calling me back to Milwaukee, only for a short time. I didn't think I'd be back here as long as I have been home. I was coming back because my parents were going through a divorce at the time, and my grandfather was actually dying of cancer. And I was really close to my family. I just felt, I need to get back for a little bit. And it's been 16 years since I've been back from Green Bay, and fortunate enough to be hosting the morning radio show on, like you mentioned, 99.1 The Mix. It's the Elizabeth and Radar show here in Milwaukee. I love my job. I'm so thankful that I'm still doing this job and to be doing it in my hometown, which is kind of rare. You don't see that a lot, especially with media. People move around quite a bit. And I thought I would be moving also, but I have no regrets. I love being home, and it's really a joy to be working on a radio station that I grew up listening to myself.
Okay. You've mentioned the radio station. Please talk to us about what your duties and responsibilities are.
Basically, to entertain and inform our listeners in the Milwaukee area and even beyond. Now that we have the technology where you can listen to the show anywhere on the free Odyssey app, little plug there. Odyssey is our parent company, AUDACY. You can get that anywhere that you have your smartphone or your smart speakers, the internet, on your desktop. Just look up 99.1 The Mix. And as the host with my co host, we talk about life. We talk about what's going on with our family. We talk about what all of you are talking about. In fact, this morning, since it was a Friday, when it's Halloween time, every Friday we call Freaky Friday. And we always have some kind of spooky theme going on that people can call and share their own stories. So this morning, the topic was, do you live in a real life haunted house? What's your stories? And so people will call in with that. But we're there to inform, we're there to entertain, and we're there to try to get people to forget about some of the things that are maybe stressing them out in the morning.
Okay. I saw this photograph of you where you're carrying, it looks like two or three different awards, all trying to carry them all at the same time. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, you're so sweet for mentioning that. That was this past year's Wisconsin Broadcaster Association Awards, or we call them in our industry the WBAs. And that is statewide television and radio. You can enter in for all kinds of different categories. And the awards that we won Best Morning Show, which is pretty exciting. And the voting takes place from other states' broadcasting association. So the Michigan Broadcasting Association, it could be some of the judges. Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois. We are the Midwestern area, and that's where the voting is. We never know which state's going to be voting, but we submit our best content, and we're really proud that we won Best Morning Show. This is my third time winning this award. And then we also won for Best Charitable Event. We do the state's largest one-day food drive with Feeding America, Eastern Wisconsin. It's called Stuff the Bus. And then I also won for best use of social media. And that was an individual award that I'm really proud of. And what I submitted for that was everything that I had shared publicly last year in regards to another health challenge I went through. And you mentioned that being BRCA2 positive and going through all the preventative surgeries since my family's been hit, unfortunately, with breast cancer. We have come to learn that we have this gene mutation. And so genetic testing has been happening. I learned I have the BRCA2 gene mutation. My risks are extremely high for breast cancer and ovarian and fallopian tube cancer. So I went through all those preventative surgeries last year. In fact, Halloween coming up will be the 1 year anniversary since I had my reconstructive surgery. But I was talking a lot about that last year because I was really adamant that people need to know about this. Knowledge is power. This decision has saved my life, and it is because of my family members and their willingness to be okay with me sharing this publicly. They support me in talking about it too. I always say I don't want what they went through to be in vain. And had they known some of this information, we might be having a very different conversation right now today.
Okay. One thing I read about you that I found interesting. I read that you're a diehard Green Bay Packer fan and also a shareholder.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I never met, I've heard of this, but I never met a Packer shareholder before.
You are talking to an owner of the Green Bay Packers, one of many, one of many. And I love the Green Bay Packers. Growing up in Wisconsin, naturally, we were raised to root for that team. But having lived in Green Bay for the last 4 years, that back Brett Favre, it was a really exciting time. One of our radio stations up there was also the sports station up in Green Bay. So a lot of the players would come in and the wives and do interviews, and you just really got a sense of what this team is about. And they're about community. And we did community events with them. And it took my love for the team to another level of insanity. Well, this is a team that is publicly shared, and you can buy stocks and therefore own a part of the team. I like to joke that I own maybe one light bulb on the big LED board. That's about it. But you do get to go to the shareholders meeting in July. You get access to exclusive gear. So I have a coffee mug that says NFL owner. I've had sweatshirts, ornaments, license plate frames, and it's just a belonging to a group. And it's really unique. It's a unique fan base that we can even say we're a part of the team. And I often try to tell people, if I have to explain it to you too hard, you're just never going to get it, because it's just a really fun group to be a part of. And I'm honored to be a shareholder of the Green Bay Packers.
Wow. Well, I go back with them a long time. Bart
Okay.
Starr, Paul Hornung, Fuzzy
So
Thurston,
it's funny you mentioned that.
Jerry Kramer.
Just this morning, we interviewed Shannon Starr, Bart Starr's granddaughter, because the Starr Children's Foundation has put together a cookbook. It's called Cooking with the Stars. They just
Oh,
released it, and it has all of these great recipes from famous football families. For example, Mama Kelsey, Travis and Jason Kelsey's mom, she has a recipe in there. From Wisconsin, we love the Watts. And the Watt boys, their wives, they put recipes in there. There's recipes in there from Vince Lombardi's grandson. You're also going to get recipes from Jim Harbaugh's wife. We all know the Harbaughs in football. Cherry Star has her recipes, and it's a really awesome fundraiser because 100% of the proceeds are going to benefit pediatric cancer research, which is what
awesome.
the Star family is all about. Can I tell you a funny story about
Yeah.
bumping in to Bart Starr in the most random of ways? I just told Shannon about this morning. She was cracking up because she said this story is very typical of her grandma and grandpa. Now, they both have since passed away. Cherry, unfortunately, passed away earlier this year. But it was the Return to Titletown event up in Green Bay. The Packers had just won the Super Bowl that year, and they had this big event. So all these alumni of the team were there, including Bart Starr. The next morning, my then husband at the time, we were shopping in the pro shop, just looking for shirts. And we were in this corner and we were looking for polo shirts for my father-in-law. Now, this is my ex-husband now, but at the time that was my husband. And I'm looking over and there's this guy that's rifling through polos, and he turns around and it's Bart Starr, just shopping like a regular person in the pro shop. And Jim, I looked around, there's nobody else there. So I called my husband over and I said, Bart Starr is right here. And sure enough, I said, Mr. Starr, could we get a picture with you? And so I regrettably didn't get one for myself, but my ex did get a picture, a great picture with Bart Starr. He could not have been nicer. And then all of a sudden, coming around these clothes is Cherry holding up a polo shirt saying, Bart, this is the size. This is the shirt you're going to want. Come on, we got to go. Like just normal couples shopping in the store. And no more than 5 minutes, it was like flies on butter. People realized it was Bart Starr. They had swarmed him. They were trying to check out. It was such an awesome moment to have that one-on-one time just for a few minutes with Bart Starr, who just walked in like a regular customer shopping in the pro shop. But as his granddaughter, Shannon, said this morning, she said, look, my grandparents had no ego, none whatsoever. If anybody would have had an ego, he would have said, okay, Bart Starr, you get a pass. He had no ego whatsoever. He was just a regular guy. And she said that her grandma always dressed her grandpa. So that wasn't uncommon for her to say, this is the shirt you need to wear. But
Right.
what a crazy story that they're just shopping in the pro shop.
Wow.
It's pretty awesome.
Wow. Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about your kidney story. I read you have a mother-in-law, Camille Hammy. I want to pronounce the name right
Yeah,
this time.
Hammy.
What is your relationship with Camille like?
She's my other mom. In every sense of the word, I can come to her with anything. To know her is to love her. She is just adored by so many people. She is one of those people that is caring. She's sunshine. She lights up the room. When you're around her, she makes you feel good. She makes you feel seen, and she is extremely compassionate, and she loves her family to her core and would do anything for her family. And when she came over and told us that she was in stage 4 kidney failure. It was December 23rd. It was Christmas time. And she showed up unexpectedly at the house, which I thought was a little odd. I thought, what? This is weird. I just had a feeling something was going on. And then, sure enough, she sat us down and told us what the doctors had said. And there was no mistakes because she had testing done earlier that fall and they thought the tests were wrong. And then they did more invasive testing and they found out, oh no, her kidneys are only working at about 12%. And I just remember being numb. And honestly, my first thought was, are we going to lose her to this? Is she going to die because of this? And my son was sitting there. I could tell he was kind of looking down, just playing sort of with his hands. He didn't really know what to think. It was a really scary, serious conversation. And she's the eternal optimist, Jim. She just is. And she said, I believe I'm going to get through this. We're going to figure out what's next. But we didn't even ask many questions because we didn't really know. We didn't know what to make of any of this. This was very new to us. And in my head, I thought, okay, we'll just get a new kidney. Can't you do that? I didn't even know what dialysis was. It was very overwhelming. And so we were kind of processing what this was all going to mean. And when it came to spring in 2020, and they said, look, you're going to either have to go on dialysis here soon or you're going to need a kidney transplant. Over 100 people came forward wanting to donate a kidney to my mother-in-law. UW Health called Camille and they said to her, they said, you must be pretty special because we thought our database was broken based on the number of entries that were coming forward of people wanting to donate to her. And that is just a small testament of who she is as a person.
Okay. I mentioned in the introduction, Camille's had kidney problems all of her life. Blood in her blood, or protein in her blood and her urine, and a number of biopsies when she was younger, and then diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And as you mentioned, just before Christmas in 2019, diagnosed with stage 4 kidney failure. Why did the doctors recommend a kidney transplant at that time? And why did Camille try to avoid dialysis?
Well, she tried to avoid dialysis because she's Irish and stubborn. I'll tell you that much. But she works at the local hospital in the town where she lives, and she works in the kitchen and deals with the dietary needs of a lot of patients, and she has dealt with dialysis patients. And she knows that that is a rough life. And if she could avoid it, she was going to. So eating well, taking care of herself, she was able to avoid it up until she almost didn't avoid it because it was now 2021. We knew that we were in this paired exchange program. We were waiting for our matches. We didn't have to wait very long, but her kidney now was functioning at less than 7%. And they said, Camille, you're going to have to go on dialysis. We don't have a match yet. And she was exploring dialysis at her house. And then they did find our matches. I mean, it was the same week when they found our matches. Thank God. But I don't know the specifics of why they suggested a kidney transplant other than she was a good candidate for it. And she was also showing that she was taking care of herself. And so they thought, all right, I think we can do this. But the issue with her kidneys, she was born with protein in her urine. And her mother had that same issue. And her grandmother had that same issue.
Ooh.
Now, my husband, he went through the testing just as far as I did. and he could have gone through the paired exchange program. However, the medical team strongly advised against it because of the family medical history. And they weren't sure, is this something that could be hereditary or not? So that's why, oddly enough, it was between him or I, which was pretty remarkable.
Wow. I looked it up. According to information from the University of Wisconsin Health, the average wait time for a kidney transplant in Wisconsin, depending on blood type and general testing, falls between 6 months and 2 years. The average time nationwide, 3 to 5 years. The average wait time for a living kidney donation in Wisconsin is usually between 3 to 6 months. Big difference.
Oh yeah, definitely. And when we entered the program, so it was Christmas a year later when, like you mentioned, I had given her the kidney bean, which was my husband's idea, to wrap up a single kidney bean in a gigantic box, which was hysterical because when she grabbed the box, she's like, this thing's pretty lightweight. Like, what could be in here? We officially entered the program at the end of January. And then they found our matches about 2 weeks later in February. And then she was going in for her surgery less than a month later in March.
Okay. Talk to us about your decision to test and later to donate to Camille in the form of a paired donation. Why did you do that?
Because I love her and I want her to be here for a really long time. I often told people about this, and I said, if you had someone come to you and say, I have cancer, I have stage 4 cancer, and you had the ability to remove that and take care of that, why wouldn't you do it? Why would you do it? It was a no-brainer to me. I never looked back, and I thought to myself, I'm a really healthy person. I take care of myself. As you mentioned in the introduction, I'm someone that tried very hard to have biological children. I lost a baby many years ago, and doctors could never figure out why or why I wasn't pregnant. And gosh, it was 11 years, 9 different doctors. My husband, Eric, is my second husband, so 2 husbands. And we just could never figure out what the issue was. And when this happened, I felt this pull on my heart a little bit. And I thought, okay, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this why God gave me this really healthy body where there isn't a whole lot of anything in our family? I mean, up until recently, like I mentioned, we have had some devastating news with breast cancer in the past 4 years. But I have grandparents that live in their 90s. Things where I thought, I think I could actually do this. And I never looked back. I never looked back. And when I got to UW Health for my full day of testing, I'm telling you, Jim, I just knew this was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. And so then when they called in December and said, hey, you're not a match, Eric and I were on speakerphone in our kitchen and I was crushed. And I thought, this isn't the plan. This isn't the plan. I am getting her a kidney. Like, this isn't the plan. Then they told me about the paired exchange program. Up until then, I knew nothing about that. I thought I had to be a direct match to her. And my head was kind of spinning and I thought, what are you telling me? What is this program? How does this work? And Eric thankfully was there asking some really hard questions because I was a mess thinking, oh my gosh, we're running out of time here and it's COVID and we've got to now get more people to test and this is going to take so long. They really explained it so simply. They said, you are healthy enough to donate a kidney. If you enter into the National Kidney Registry through this voucher program, the paired exchange program, Camille will move to the top of the list because a recipient can't go into that National Kidney Registry on their own. They can only go in through a donor. And so I would be the donor that would bridge that for her. And I remember Eric saying on that call, does this get my mom a kidney? And they said yes, and a better kidney because it's a bigger pond to fish from, which means better matches and better results. And so that night, Brayson came home. We told him the news. because I thought this is a family decision, and it was unanimous. Eric Brace and I, we all said, yeah, no, we're in. If she's in, I'm in. So when she opened the kidney bean that next week at Christmas, I had to be very specific in what I was saying to her. And so I practiced what I was going to say over and over and over. And I just said, kidney. I told her, I said, Camille, I have been approved to donate a kidney to someone else through the parent exchange program in exchange for you getting a kidney. If you want to get into the National Kidney Registry, I will go in on our behalf and you will be my voucher. Are you in? And without hesitation, she's crying and she's like, I'm in, I'm in. And it was the best Christmas ever.
Well, just so people know, you sent me a newspaper article from the Milwaukee Journal, and if you read through that article, there's a video. The video is of Camille and our friend Elizabeth at that Christmas celebration when Elizabeth tells her that they're a match through a parent donation. So interesting stuff.
Did
And
you
just
catch that
so,
there was a word that was bleeped out? She was so
yeah,
shocked. She said, are you bleeping kidding me?
me,
And I don't think she expected that video to go national like it did. And she said to me later, she said, wow, I probably shouldn't have swore. And I said, no, it's perfectly fine that you swore because this was going to save your life. And that is something to get excited about.
welcome to the National Football League.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want our audience to know, Elizabeth, I'm an old trial lawyer, so I did a lot of research in order to get ready for the broadcast. And if you go to my Facebook page, the broadcast is pinned to the top of my Facebook page. And in the comments is all of my research. So if anybody wants to drill down or they want more information, just about everything I could find on Elizabeth is there, including that video. So you might want to check that out.
That's
Um,
awesome.
let's talk about Camille receiving her kidney on March 25th. Tell us a little bit about what happened March 25th, 2021.
It was nerve-wracking for sure because we were just hoping that everything worked. We were hoping that the donor in California would go through with it. And she and I were considered bridge donors since our surgeries were not on the same day. And when we received the text from my father-in-law that the kidney had been put in place and it started working immediately, we were flooded with emotions. I was at work, I was crying, I was so grateful. And I just remember thinking, we now get to do that for another family. We have the ability to do this and keep another family intact. And I, in the next 5 days, kept thinking, I don't want to get in a car accident. I can't get sick with COVID. Nothing could happen to me. We live about an hour away from the hospital where the surgery was happening. And when my husband was driving there at one point, he kind of was weaving in and out of traffic trying to get around this car. And I said, you need to drive so carefully. I have a kidney that somebody needs. And he said, Elizabeth, it's fine. And I'm like, no, we have to get to the hospital. We have to get to the hospital. And Camille was home at that point, but she had a little bit of fluid buildup. So they brought her back. And again, because it's COVID, there weren't a lot of people that could be at the hospital. So it was a blessing and a curse. A curse, we hated that she was back at the hospital and that she was having a little bit of fluid buildup. But the blessing was she was there. We were on the same floor. I got to see her before I went in for surgery. And it was incredibly emotional, incredibly emotional. And she just keeps saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And all I keep saying to her is, you don't have to thank me at all. Are you kidding me? She gave me my husband, my grandson. Like she gave me my family. She's my family. This is what you do for family. And we were able to be at the hospital at the same time. We were able to walk to each other's room. It was also really nice because then my husband could be there with my father-in-law. Because think about it, my husband's dealing with his wife and his mom at the hospital at the same time. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a
Yeah.
lot. And again, it was COVID time. So we had to be so careful. And I was just on this high. I really was because I felt in that moment isn't there a Mark Twain quote that says that there's two important moments in a person's life, the moment they're born and the moment they realize why. And that's what I was feeling in that moment. Because I have a public job, we were talking a lot about this. We have people signing up to be organ donors. And there was this energy, and I felt this support from all across the United States, honestly. And I was ready to do this. There wasn't a single fear in my body. And then when I came out of surgery, and then the next day, I had an email from my surgeon that said, "Want you to know your kidney made it to Kentucky and it started working immediately, and your recipient is doing well." And I just started bawling. I just started bawling my eyes out. And I thought, we did it. We did it. And we know how that feels to get that good news because of seeing our mother in law find out that her kidney that she received work. And now we were able to do that for another family. And it was one of the greatest
Wow.
moments of my life. I get teared up because it was one of the greatest moments of my entire life.
Talk to us a little bit about your recovery time. How long did it take before you were home?
I was able to go home the next day if I wanted to. But we're going to be honest here on this podcast. My mother in law was still in the hospital, and we decided to stay an extra day so that we could be there with her and that my husband could be there for my father in law. So I did stay 2 nights. So we were able to leave on day 3. We left at the same time, which was really exciting and wonderful for us to all be there and take a picture. And then the recovery, I tell people it was actually pretty easy. I mean, you're a little uncomfortable the first few days because you have all these incisions. It's laparoscopic. You have a giant C-section scar. My friend Lauren joked that I birthed a kidney through the C-section scar. But again, I was on this high, and I don't mean that as in like I was taking drugs, because truthfully, I only took I probably took Oxy for a day and a half, and that was it. And then I was on Tylenol. I have a very high tolerance for pain, but I also work out and take care of myself. And when I knew I was going through this process, I stopped drinking alcohol. I cut a lot of sugar. I wanted to give this person receiving my kidney the best, most healthy kidney they could possibly get. And I was doing a lot of cardio because I wanted my heart to be as strong as possible so that I would be able to recover really easily. And every day got better. Every day got better. And because my job isn't a really physically demanding job, I think I missed maybe 10 days of work, so 2 weeks of work, and then I was doing the show from home, and I was back to work after 2 weeks. But everyone's story is different, and I
Excellent.
want to stress that. Everyone's recovery is very, very different. But I do credit how I prepared myself before the surgery to perhaps why the recovery was a little bit easier.
Talk to us about how your health and Camille's health has been since the time of the transplant up to the present.
Camille has the best kidney function she's had her entire life. She looks incredible. I think she's lost about 75 pounds. She is putting in the work, eating well. In fact, on paper, it's like she doesn't have diabetes.
Oh,
That's how
wow.
good her numbers are. She's very, very diligent. And I feel great too. But again, they wouldn't take a kidney from someone that isn't already healthy and taking care of themselves. So I can't have ibuprofen. I can't have any NSAIDs because it's too hard on the kidneys. I watch my protein intake and I watch my salt, but you should do that anyways. And I drink a lot of water. But really not much has changed. There's times I even forget that I did this. People will ask about it and like, "Hey, how are you doing? How's your mother-in-law?" And I'll stop and say, "Why, did something happen? Oh, yeah, that's right. We went through this surgery," because it's been 3 years now. It's been a while.
I want to ask you about your giving back and your kidney advocacy. I read a quote that I want to share with our audience. Quote, "My gut told me to do this. I never looked back. I was put on this earth to do this. I want to live a life of purpose, and I want to give back." Unquote. My hero, Elizabeth. Tell us
Oh,
a little bit about that.
what's the point of all of us being here on this earth if we're not going to help one another? And when you help someone, you do get a lot back in return. And I was so touched by this stranger in California donating a kidney for my mother-in-law. And I learned through this process that these kidneys don't last forever, and that Camille may one day need another kidney. And that is a lot of what motivates me to still continue advocating for kidney donors, but also being a walking billboard saying, hey, I'm living a totally normal, healthy life. So there should be nothing that goes against a donor. They shouldn't be at the risk of losing their job. They should still be able to get life insurance benefits, because there is research that shows there is nothing, I think the risk is like less than 2% that something can happen to me catastrophically because I donated a kidney. I have a
Less than
greater risk.
that now. It's less than 1% now, Elizabeth.
See, I run a bigger risk of getting into a car accident or having a heart attack or something like that happening. And so I have also now, since going so publicly about this, have met hundreds of people that need kidneys and are in kidney failure. And a lot of times it's circumstances beyond their control. There are a set of twins in our area in Wisconsin that were born with bad hearts, and they needed heart transplants by the time they were 1 year old. And they are an incredible family. They have a great foundation. And it was brought to my attention from their dad that the parents were told they are going to likely need kidney transplants one day because of the anti-rejection meds that they're on for their heart transplants. And I sit there and think, as if this family hasn't gone through enough. There's people that could be in an accident and have kidney damage that way. There was a young man whose name was also Eric that decided he wanted to enlist in the military. And when he was going through all of the testing, his numbers came back terrible when it came to his kidneys. And they thought, well, you should probably get this looked at. Stage 4 kidney failure. In stage 4 kidney failure, this is a guy that's willing to fight for our freedom and fight for this country, something very selfless. And now he's sitting there going, what? And they don't even know why. I mean, there's so many different circumstances of what can happen. And I hear these stories and I'm so drawn to think about, I have the ability to reach people through my job and through my platform. And I'm a public speaker and I can tell stories and get people to listen to what I have to say. Why not use that for good and help save some lives?
Talk to us about your advocacy work for the American Kidney Fund, for the AKF, meeting with your members of Congress and staff. What was that like?
It's exhilarating. And people need to remember, these politicians work for you. They need to hear from you. If they don't know the needs, if they don't know these stories, how are they going to push these bills through? How are they going to get federal funding? That is why it's important to share your story. And I often tell people that when you are in kidney failure, that is not the time to be silent, because time is not on your side. Time is now ticking. You are waiting for that transplant or you're on dialysis. And that is why it's important for all of us that are in this kidney community to talk and share our stories. And I enjoy talking with the politicians. When I was growing up in Milwaukee, my grandfather was involved in politics in Milwaukee, and he would take me a lot of these events, and I really got a kick out of all of it. I thought it was really interesting and fascinating. And I do believe in the power of the people and sharing those stories. And I've seen that. When I was younger, we did advocacy work for drunk driving laws. And I was out there in DC in high school advocating for stricter drunk driving laws because our family has unfortunately been impacted by drunk driving. And we did lower the legal blood alcohol driving limit. Like, it worked. Advocacy works. If there's something you're passionate about, don't just complain about it in private. Get out and talk to your elected officials. That is their job.
Talk to us about some of the videos that you've done. I went on YouTube when I was doing my research, and oh my God, Elizabeth Kay owns that network.
Well, YouTube is kind of funny because those videos, I don't even know who posts some of those videos. We on social media are very active. And that's the world we're in now. It's all about these quick videos. And if you're putting a video out, if anybody wants to put a video out, one of the things that we talk about in media is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Get to the point right away and serve your audience right away, and make sure you let them know what's in it for them. Why should they keep watching this video?
The other thing that I noticed is you're very candid about your talks with your radio audience. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I mean, you talk about kidney donation and your experiences all the time with your folks.
Our audience, I consider friends in a lot of ways, even though I don't know each of them by name. They share their mornings with me, and they trust me, and I don't take that for granted. And I recognize that knowledge is power. And in this case, knowledge saved lives. We didn't know anything about the paired exchange program at all until this experience. Clearly, we aren't the only ones. Why not tell more people about it? Why not also tell people, look how easy it is to donate a kidney? And I'm so excited to say there have been a number of people that have heard our story that have now gone on and donated kidneys. We've helped find people kidneys on the radio show. That's exciting as well. My husband works in billboards, so we kind of go hand in hand. He's putting billboards out for people, trying to help them find kidneys. I'm talking about it on the radio. Knowledge is power. I can't stress that enough. And it could save your life, or you have the ability to save somebody else's life.
Excellent.
And
Are there any?
I will say, Jim, I find a lot of healing in community too. I'm one of those people that I need to talk about my feelings. I need to talk about what I'm going through. I don't want to feel alone. And talking about this also helps me heal. I mean, this was a traumatic situation that we went through. It was very scary. Again, it was COVID. And it was just nice to feel that connection with others, because we all felt so isolated at that time.
Excellent. Excellent. Are there other activities that you have engaged in that promote your advocacy, that promote kidney donation that maybe I missed?
Well, I will say locally, I work with the National Kidney Foundation of Wisconsin. I work with them, and I'm involved in a lot of their events as well. But again, with the American Kidney Fund, it was AKF reached out to me through my radio show. They had seen on social media what I was going through, and they reached out before I had even donated. And I said, yep, I am in. Absolutely. Sign me up. I would love to be a part of it. And whenever I go out to Washington, D.C., where I get to meet you and so many of our other, I call them kidney friends, my kidney friends, it's inspiring. And it's a reminder of why we do this.
Do you have any future advocacy activities planned? Anything coming up in the nearby future?
Well, AKF always knows I'm just a phone call away if we need to have a conversation with any of our elected officials. So it isn't just going out to DC, it's also having these phone calls or Zoom chats here in Wisconsin. And I'm always on board. I'm always willing to chat. There's nothing on the calendar right now in this moment, but I'm always just a phone call away if they need me.
All right. We're in the home stretch here, Elizabeth. Do you have any final statements that you wish to make to our audience before we conclude the broadcast tonight?
That's a really good question. I would say, back to my previous point, don't be afraid of information. There are people that we've met that sensed there was perhaps an issue with their kidneys, and they didn't get to the doctor soon enough because they were nervous and they were scared. Again, knowledge is power. Talk to people, and whatever you're passionate about, go after it. Maybe there's another kind of advocacy work that you're interested in doing. Maybe it isn't just tied to kidneys. Maybe it's diabetes. Maybe it's heart disease. Talk and share your story, because that is what people remember. And that is how you can see change happen, especially on the legislative level when it comes to trying to get these bills passed, trying to get federal funding, trying to get research, trying to make sure that the only cure isn't just well, there isn't really a cure, but dialysis and kidney donation. Share your story. You have a story to share. People need to hear it, and don't be afraid of information.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on tonight and sharing your story with us, which is just a remarkable story, and is such a great advocate for kidney donation and for people that are seeking and helping out people that are seeking. It's just a tremendous thing that you do, and you take advantage of your audience and make sure that they're well informed. And it's just wonderful that you came on and educated all of us tonight and helped to raise a little awareness. I want you to know I appreciate it very much. And just so the folks at home know, don't worry if you missed the broadcast. Your Uncle Jim's going to share the replay all over the place. You know this, right?
Well,
So if you
Jim,
missed the broadcast, you can check it out later.
you're the hardest working person in showbiz. I can't believe it. On a Friday night, you're doing all this research, you're doing this podcast, and I want to ask you, look, here's me being the media person asking you, what motivates you for your advocacy work? What keeps you constantly coming back and doing these podcasts and setting up these interviews? What is it?
Well, you have to remember, I'm a PKD patient, polycystic kidney disease. PKD runs in my family. I've lost 5 members of my family to polycystic kidney disease, including my father. And I was very close with my dad. I spent every day with him the last month that he was alive in the hospital here in Hammond, Indiana. And when he was in, I talked to his doctors, who later on turned out to be my doctors. And I told them, I'll donate a kidney if I can save my father.
Mm-hmm.
But it was too late by then. He had had a heart attack, and they told me, we don't know what's keeping your father alive. His heart is hanging there like a bag, basically. And he was one of the first people in Northwest Indiana to go on peritoneal dialysis back in 1987. And even though he was so sick, and even though he knew he was going to die, and he was never going to go home, he knew all these things. We talked openly about it.
Mm-hmm.
He still wanted to go down and talk to patients about peritoneal dialysis and the advantages of doing dialysis at home. And I remember wheeling him down to speak to this gentleman, and he was not like you and I, Elizabeth. My dad was an introvert.
Wow.
He was a quiet guy, one of those people that was raised children should be seen and not heard, that kind of thing. And he struggled, and he stammered, and he had a horrible time talking to this gentleman. And when he finished and I took him back, I had to wrap both of my arms around him to wheel him back to his room. And they had to use a Hoyer lift to put him back into his bed. And he died maybe a week, 10 days later. So the reason that I do the things that I do is because when I saw my father doing those things that he did, and in the condition he was in at the time, and I was diagnosed maybe 60 days after my dad passed away.
Oh, Jim.
I just told myself, I said, you know, you've done a lot of different things in your life. You've practiced law, you've tried cases, you've written law in the state of Indiana, you've spoken to groups of people. All these things you did, your experiences, your education, everything that has happened to you. And when I was diagnosed with PKD, I took it as a blow because, like I said, I watched my dad die.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made up my mind right then and there. I was called to do this. This is the reason I'm here. And I will keep doing this until I'm gone. And the one thing in my old age now, I'm 70, that I want to make sure of, I know that kidney issues will not stop when I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that I connect with younger advocates. And if they have questions or they have issues or they want to learn,
Yeah.
you can always reach out to your Uncle Jim, and I'm more than happy to help. And that's why I do these broadcasts. I want to raise awareness. I want to help people. So
And
that's
and
kind
there's
of the
and there's
gist of my story.
and there's healing in that. There's also healing in that. And your dad would be so proud of you. I hope you know that. I'm proud of you. I see what you're doing, and that is your why. And again, back to that Mark Twain quote, that is your purpose. You are living your purpose, and you're leaving an incredible legacy. And I'm honored to know you, my friend, and honored to talk with you tonight.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. A great honor to speak with you. I've got a couple of things I need to button up with my audience, who's coming on next week, stuff like that. Um, I'm going to let you go. I've kept you for almost an hour. I really appreciate you taking time to speak with us, and I promise you that I will get this broadcast out as much as I can, and hopefully a lot of people will see it, and I will report to you later on next week about how we did.
Awesome. Well, it's my pleasure. You know where to find me. I'm so glad that we met and that I can call you one of my kidney friends.
Absolutely. I'm glad to call you one of my kidney friends.
Thanks so much. Be well, buddy.
Be well. Say hi to Eric and your son for me.
Will do.
All right. Folks, that wraps up our broadcast for tonight. Wow. just just a great broadcast. So many wonderful things. Elizabeth is just so remarkable that her story is just incredible. So I'm going to thank you all for the broadcast tonight. Next week on Kidney Stories 2, our friend Carol Offen is coming back. As you'll recall, Carol and Betsy wrote a book about kidney donation. We're going to talk about kidney donation and her advocacy efforts. So, you don't want to miss that. And as always, um, your Uncle Jim will see you very soon. So, everyone, take care and thank you so much for watching.